Art Snackers, my name is James of James Luke Burke Creative, and welcome to another month of ArtSnacks Box Freestyle, where we take the supplies from the June 2023 ArtSnacks Plus box, experiment with them to within an inch of their lives, and then fingers crossed create a masterpiece for the ArtSnacks Challenge. This month, I wanted to let you know that my fun fact is I have seen the new live-action Little Mermaid movie 3 times in theaters already, and I do plan on going back and seeing it a few more times. I got to enjoy it while it's in the theater. I love it. I'm absolutely a huge fan of it, and I cannot wait to see it again. Let's dive you into the box. Here is the June 2023 ArtSnacks Plus box. Here's everything inside. Let's look inside the pencil case and take a closer look at what we'll be playing with today. First up in the Plus box, we have the Frisk Hot Press Watercolor Paper Pad size A4. We have an Edding 5000 acrylic marker in broad. I have the color Mellow Mint, as well as a Princeton Glacier Series 4950 synthetic brush round size 2. We will also be using the ArtSnacks pencil case to keep everything nice and stored away safely, as well as 2 Graphite Grapho twin tip markers. I have the colors Pale Rose and Amethyst, and the King Art Studio metallic pens set of 4. We have our snack and our sticker. Let's set everything up and get to experimenting. First thing I'm going to swatch out are the King Art Studio metallic pens. We got a set of 4 in the box, and it's an ArtSnacks exclusive for this month. We specially curated this pack of King Art Studio metallic pens just for ArtSnackers. Add some metallic magic to a variety of surfaces with these opaque pens. The ink is permanent, waterproof, and quick drying. You'll achieve a consistent 1mm fine line with every stroke. So I felt like these were kind of like a small marker. It has that felt tip, very opaque. I got a beautiful kind of deep bluey purple, a yellow gold, a bluey green, and more of a reddy purple. And don't believe anything is waterproof when I'm around, because I will scrub everything back to life if it's on a waterproof paper. Not a waterproof paper, a watercolor paper. So in all my experimentation, I did manage to get them to move with a bit of scrubbing. I do think, however, if you use them in a thin layer and let them dry into the substrate, that they would probably be pretty much, I would say, what do you call it, water resistant. I wouldn't say they're completely unmovable, since I did manage to get them to go. But moving anything that much, scrubbing too much into the paper, you do risk a bit of pilling, so just be a bit careful with that. You could just avoid all of that together. If you had a little plastic palette off to the side or something, a non-porous palette where you could scrub some of those markers on and just activate them with water that way and get a pseudo watercolor, which I do at the end of the, I guess, the ArtSnacks challenge. I don't know if I did it in my experimentation. I think I just saved that for the challenge. The next thing that I swatched out were the 2 Graphite Grapho twin tip markers. This is a staff favorite at ArtSnacks. Wet your palette with the Grapho. That's it. Wet your palette with the Grapho. This water-based marker features 2 different tips, a flexible brush nib and fine felt nib. Its transparent, brilliant ink can be fanned out with a wet brush and easily blended. Much like I said, you can make a pseudo watercolor out of the metallic pens. You can also do it with this. Any water-based marker you can pretty much make a little bit of a watercolor out of. Same thing, do it on the paper, scrub it out, bring it back to life, or use a palette and just kind of mix it in the palette in the little wells, put your water in there, and you can make a little watercolor. It does shear out really beautifully. I like to do a lot of kind of bleaching effects with the ink on the page and a lot of splatter. I also, with any with any water-based markers, I will usually touch them tip to tip to create this gradient effect, and it can be really effective for getting a really smooth gradient, especially from really random colors that don't tend to mix very well. I've also drawn on the page with the markers side by side and tried to achieve the same gradient. It's actually much harder to do it drawing from one color to another. It is a lot easier if you just touch those tips together. Usually you want the darker tip to touch the lighter tip and use the lighter color, because it will essentially self-clean as you use the marker, and the ink coming from the barrel that pushes out the ink that's left on the tip is what kind of makes that smooth blend from whatever color you've touched tip to tip with. So that is a great way to play with those. And if you use them for that water splatter effect that I did as well, you will shear out the ink, because essentially you're adding a lot of water to the tip and it needs more of that ink from the barrel to flow through to kind of be vibrant again. So you can use that to actually have a really light color, a really light version, or a very sheer version of the marker, and you can do a lot of layering with that, and you can also kind of use that to your advantage to make a lot of different you can get a whole range of colors. You don't have to have the one solid vibrant purple. You can sheer it all the way out to pastel and barely there. And then again, when you're not self-cleaning, the brush tip will do that. When you're using the brush tip or the pen or the marker, the ink will push through the barrel and kind of restore that tip to life. So I do use a lot of these markers, the water-based ones, in a lot of wet on wet applications. I did completely saturate this little piece and let all of that ink flow. I knew it was going to flow a lot, so I was kind of expecting crazy results, and I did get what I expected, but I do love the randomness of it. I do think it's kind of a fun way to play. You really can't control it. I love to see what all those products do when they're just floating around in the water. We also have the ArtSnacks pencil case. This is limited edition and ArtSnacks exclusive. To celebrate our 10th anniversary, we're giving our awesome subscribers a new color of our signature pencil case. Show off your love for ArtSnacks with this limited edition case, custom made from durable nylon with 2 roomy compartments. You can fit everything in your box and more inside. So I will store some lovely little art supplies in there. I love that green too. Very, very bright, nice emerald green. The Princeton Glacier series 4950 synthetic brush, size round 2. The Princeton Glacier is the coolest brush around. It features a crystal clear handle with a solid weight, which feels comfortable in your hand, ideal for acrylic and watercolor. This versatile brush has premium synthetic bristles that retain their shape after every use. Use it with water to blend your new markers, which is what we've done here. It has a nice little snap to it. It's not a super snappy brush. It does have that nice weight to it as well. You wouldn't expect it because it's got that clear barrel. It does have a very sleek look to it. I do like a size 2, but anything that you use that is a lot smaller, you tend to, I think, bring a lot of detail into your work. So if you're someone that struggles with a bit of perfectionism, maybe try and get your hands on a size larger than a 2. But I also love it for all that fine detail work. And it came in handy for my piece today, because I did go a little bit crazy with all the extra details. The Edding 5000 acrylic marker broad, paint wherever, whenever with the Edding 5000 acrylic marker. This broad-tipped tool features a chisel nib that can produce varying line widths from 5 to 10 millimeters. It's filled with highly pigmented, light-fast, water-based acrylic paint. Now, I used the paint before it dried to be able to spread it around and get that minty, kind of soft, watery acrylic going around, but it is a really wonderful, kind of really hefty, heavy-duty paint marker, and I do like that mint color. The Frisk Hot Press watercolor paper pad size A4 is new to ArtSnacks. It's made in Britain. Frisk produces carbon-balanced paper sourced from well-managed forests and a socially responsible chain of production. This pad features 12 sheets of their hot press watercolor paper, which has an absorbent surface specifically designed to keep your colors clean and bright. The 300 GSM weight can easily handle watercolor paint and markers, and I tell you what, I put it through its paces with all the water and marker that I threw at it today, so let that be a testament to the truth of that statement. This was a wonderful paper to work with. I found that maybe it was just the conditions I was working in, but I also used a lot of water. It stayed wet for a long time. It's a hot press watercolor paper, so there's not a heavy tooth to it, and I did really enjoy the bright white, vibrant colors, like the bright white of the paper really popping out the vibrancy of those colors and showing a lot of that sheer transparency that we get when we add a lot of water to them. So I had a really wonderful time using that paper as well, and I do like a good 300 GSM if I'm going to get really mixed media-y. If I'm going to get really mixed media on it, just because it needs to be able to hold up. It is really hard to do all the things that you want to do and kind of go crazy if the paper is a little too thin. So 300 GSM is just the sweet spot for that. After the experimentation, I have to be honest, I really didn't have a solid idea of what final piece I wanted to create for the ArtSnacks challenge. I felt a little thoughtless, a little like lost for ideas all of a sudden, which is not very like me. I usually have a lot of ideas that I just want to start doing. However, when that happens, I do just let myself doodle. I just let it go. Doesn't really matter. And I figured for this, the only intention I really had was to A, complete the challenge because it's the ArtSnacks challenge and I want to do that. But B, I wanted to use a lot of the techniques that I had experimented with. I wanted to play with that wet marker into the wet puddles on the page. I wanted to mix all the inks together. I wanted to make the little watercolor in the palette. I wanted to do the ink bleed. I wanted to watch what happened when I dropped water over everything. I wanted to use that splatter technique with the paintbrush and just flicking the water off the end of the brush tips. So I knew I wanted to use all those experimentations, and the best way for me to do that is to give myself a lot to work with, like quantity on the page. I need a lot of characters, I need a lot of drawings, a lot of things to work with so that I can mix it up each time. Sometimes, like you're seeing here, I'll wet the page and I'll draw straight onto that. My character will have this beautiful ink bleed effect, and it will slowly feather out as that paper dries, and it will give it a completely different look to the one that I did in gold up the top, which I actually drew first and then used water all over the top. So the more characters I could play with, the more opportunity I could switch up, not just the medium that I was using, but the, how do you say it? The steps, the process, the order, that's it, the order of steps. So instead of wetting the page first, I could do it, you know, marker onto dry paper, marker onto wet paper, and vice versa, and switch it all up really. And I could use the brush marker and see if that gave me a different effect than the metallic marker, or how the inks bled. And I did see that in the experimentation. I saw some really interesting ink bleeds with those metallic markers and some beautiful ink bleeds with those brush markers, but they were different. And sometimes different colors will push against other colors and they will do their own little reaction. And so, I mean, I just kind of lent into all of it. I thought if I could get the most water and the most product onto this page, it would not only give me a really interesting piece to look at, but it will be the most successful kind of, I think it's the most successful method to getting the most familiar with the supplies in the box. It's not just creating one piece, you know, and trying to find the best use for each art supply. I do believe in that. I think that's a great place to start if you're feeling a little overwhelmed. But if you want to get just the ultimate look at every single supply and how it works, I think giving yourself a full page of characters to doodle and play with is a great way to look at how everything mixes together, because you have so many options to switch up the supplies, the colors, the order, the process, the technique, and see how it all works together. This is the ink splatter technique. If you hold your brush pen closer to the page, you'll get a finer splatter. It also depends on how wet your brush is. If you use a lot of water on your brush, you will get a lot of a kind of like juicier, bigger water droplet kind of splatter. If you've just got a really small amount of water on that brush, like it's just wet, it's not dripping with water or anything, and then you hold the brush pen really close to the page and you just flick it across the tip, you will get a really fine splatter. And if you can get it really fine and keep going over it and over and over, it actually looks like an airbrush. It's really, really fun and effective. It can be finicky. I mean, all of the times you bring water into the process, you're asking for a bit of, you know, a bit of whatever happens type of an experience. But if you're, you know, willing to play with it on a spread like this, it doesn't really matter all that much. I used the tip to tip technique to create a gradient just to fill in the negative space here. I do these doodle pages with the characters in mind first, and I will just intuitively draw wherever I think they fit in, and then wherever there's negative space, that's where I get to doodle all non-character related things. And there's no real direction I go with that. There are some motifs that repeat themselves a lot just because they're things that I like to draw, so leaves and vines, flowers, but then a few houses popped up in this one too. You can see I just made a bit of a watercolor by putting some of those markers into the paint palette and just mixing it with water. Created this really beautiful transparent bluey green color that I could just use to fill in the background. And I do like using a lot of the transparency in those inky watercolors. They dry really different to actual watercolors. Sometimes I find that the blooms and blossoms create a much crisper and more vibrant edge to the kind of blooming and blossoming, and a lot of the times the transparency is very, very sheer and there's no granulation whatsoever. A lot of the time in watercolor you can get a beautiful granulating effect from the pigments that separate around, but the dyes of the markers tend to be a lot flatter and a lot cleaner to see through as far as a transparent layer is concerned, which is great. When you want to use a lot of layering, you can get a lot more of a soft, subtle effect with a lot of colors blending together. Like if you get really, wow, I can't even say what I need to say. If you get really watery mixes, you'll notice like right in the middle character, right in the middle of the page, if you look over to the side of the face, there are tons of blended transparent layers that are kind of laying over the top of each other and interacting with each other. It's a very, very soft, beautiful blend. So, and very clean. It doesn't get too muddy and too unreadable. Just something I've noticed over the years using water-based markers as quote-unquote watercolor just tends to have that effect. And a lot of them dry down, even though you can activate them with water, a lot of them, once they're dry, will not reactivate. Once they've been dried from that watercolor purpose, they tend to be only active that one time, and then they'll dry down, and then that's how you can layer them a lot easier. Because with traditional watercolor, you can reactivate the layer underneath, and so sometimes you won't get really clear separations between layers. They'll all kind of blend together a little bit. They'll kind of level themselves out. But with the ink, the dyes in those water-based markers, a lot of the time you will actually get a very clear separation between layers, and then you can build your tones up a lot more effectively. But this was just a whole bunch of doodles. I mean, essentially it has that little water baby theme, but beyond that, there is not much else to say except enjoy the peel of the washi tape. I always think a border is a great idea. If you're gonna do these big doodle pages, nothing makes it look more crisp and clean and fresh and intentional than having a beautiful, thick white border. I do like a substantial white border. I think it just frames everything up really beautifully, bring all of those colors right to the edge so you can really pop out that nice crisp edge to it. And I am just really, really happy with it. Considering I didn't know where I was gonna go, but I knew I wanted to use all those techniques, I think I'm gonna give myself an A+++ for that. I'm very generous with myself when I do my arts and crafts. I hope you had a good time watching it. I can't wait to see what you get up to this month for the ArtSnacks Challenge. I hope you enjoy all of the wonderful supplies in the box, and I look forward to seeing all of your work on social media. I will leave you with this B-roll footage and see you in the outro in a second. There we go, there is our final piece for the ArtSnacks Challenge this month. I hope you enjoyed watching this little Water Babies piece come to life. If you would like to join ArtSnacks, you can do so using the code JAMES10 at checkout for 10% off, and don't forget to share your great work with us in the Mix community and on social media using the hashtag ArtSnacks Challenge. If you can hear any scratching in the background, my cat just decided to rip out the couch. I better go and tend to that. See you next month, bye.